Welcome back to Simply Trade Tips and Hammer and Heels. I'm Renee Chiuchiarelli. I'm here with Julie Parks. How you doing, Jules?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing, Renee?
Good. Doing well today. All right, so we are still on Series 6. We're running into Episode 3. We're gonna give you guys some bite-sized, insightful segments of detailed, cool trade information. And we're gonna give you a call to action and an FIO. Figure it out. So stay with us till the end. Okay, Jules, what are we covering today?
Hey, so I think that to kind of keep the momentum going on org structure, so we laid the foundation in episode 1. We discussed some common concerns in episode 2, which was budget, sponsorship, and conflict of interest. And now I think we should talk about like problems that we face in each structure. So the hope is that there's something for everyone out there. And Renee and I have a lot of great examples because we've all worked in every single one of these organization types. So hopefully this is news you can use, and it'll be kind of like this choose your own adventure, but with fewer dragons and more emails.
And hopefully no audit findings. Okay. So we're going to get tactical today, and we're going to, like you said, we're going to talk to each structure: centralized, functional, centralized, decentralized, and matrix.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the most common, which is centralized structure, where customs sits under supply chain, finance, or legal.
Right. And if you have a centralized structure, customs is organized as an operational support team in this example, right? Meaning that they mostly file entries, answer questions, fix issues. And then Renee, what do you see as the key problem with this organization?
That customs or trade gets involved too late. The risk is already baked in and you're stuck. You're like, what? You're stuck reacting. I mean, that happened to us several times. All of a sudden a shipment will arrive and everything's out of control, different Incoterms. And you're like, who agreed to this?
So a couple of things you might want to consider is kind of 3 things. One, you want to create governance where there probably isn't any. So this talks to a real decision-making forum for classification, valuation, and origin, so that you're not stuck with something when it occurs. You're kind of, you're not in react mode. You're really having that buy-in as things are happening. The second is that you can establish a single source of truth for trade data that ends up being visible to all your constituents. And then kind of the third is to build in a corporate or 3, I suppose, because you can pick any one of these, to build in corporate compliance activities so that customs isn't just paperwork. It's an oversight function as well. So don't think about if the function is purely operating, then you want to build in and talk to your corporate compliance friends about what are the key controls you can put in. So if you're putting these controls in, you won't be so reactionary.
Yeah, I love that source of truth. I was just looking at something and I'm like, we need a source of truth. But in this structure, customs must have the authority. So we're using a strong word, over classification, valuation, and origin decisions, procedures, not just filing the entry day by day, tactical.
Right. And customs needs direct access to finance, procurement, and sales. Kind of because the customs outcome is usually determined upstream, meaning who the supplier is, who the product design, how the product is designed, the terms of sale and the cost of the build is all done upstream, so that you end up kind of with what you have. So if you have that direct access, and some of the controls built in, when a supplier is selected, hopefully they will determine if they have forced labor ahead of time before it gets to you at the import side, for example.
Yeah, I always call that cradle to grave. Put us up at the cradle, right? So, and the biggest must not is in centralized structures is not letting your broker define your compliance position.
Yeah.
Now they're your partner, but they can't define your compliance position.
Right. So brokers execute. They do an excellent job executing, but you still own the risk.
Yeah. Truth bomb. If customs only touches data after the PO is issued, your compliance strategy is already late, which we've said.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are we into next, Jules?
Yeah. So let's try to discuss kind of that decentralized org structure. So in this kind of divisional or decentralized regional it could be regional, it could be product line based, it could be business unit based kind of discussion. So
Yeah.
Renee,
So if
maybe you have
you,
a case. Mhm.
yeah, I always call it decentralized, but if you have divisional or decentralized,
Mhm.
the customs is organized locally, meaning each region or business has their own way.
Yeah. And your key problem might be inconsistency, like different HS codes for the same product and different business lines, different origin positions, different broker instructions, different brokers, right? Then you're not leveraging your spend, right? And actually, in this case, no one can explain why because everybody thinks they're doing the right thing in their decentral structures.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is my least favorite. Sorry.
Yeah.
The tweaks you want to consider are central governance for hard decisions, of course,
Mhm.
classification, origin, value,
Mhm.
enterprise-wide data tracking at minimum for,
Mhm.
you want to see this data overarching
Mhm.
one system, centralized audits and quality checks across the divisions. You could even use internal audit to
Yeah.
help you. We did that in some organizations,
Yeah.
right?
That's a good point.
When you have this decentralized structure.
Yeah, or at a minimum, kind of if divisions still own their own checks, they need to report results into governance or some type of a governance structure so leadership sees the patterns and can fix those root causes mostly across the organization if they can.
Okay, so the rule is decentralized execution is fine.
Right, but decentralized compliance is not.
Awesome. All right, so now we're on to the next one, matrix, where we have dual reporting,
Mhm.
shared accountability, and confusion served daily.
Oh, I didn't know what this meant when I joined some organizations and they're talking about just work the matrix. By the way, it can go in your favor and it can very much not. But in a matrix, customs might report to supply chain for operations, but align to legal for compliance and policy. Um,
And the result can be decision gridlock. We used to call it what? Boiling the ocean.
yes.
Nobody knows who can say yes,
Yeah.
and customs ends up playing the referee, or you need 15 people to say yes. That's what
Right.
I found.
Yeah. The other way around. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and then yeah, when I managed, I had, in fact, just a specific
mhm,
situation. I had corporate compliance, business unit compliance, and then
mhm.
I was in a shared service. So we had right there three different leadership decision makers.
Right, right. And I think you feel like in that structure, when you have kind of three masters, if you will, the alignment matters more than the org chart, meaning you're not going to get anything done, but you might do amazing on your goals, but you're not going to get anything done for the organization if you don't have alignment across those three, pipes, Renee, that you mentioned. And from my perspective,
Yes.
kind of after working the matrix, I do think we can run Congress at the end of it. I think a lot of the gridlock that exists in Congress, Renee, you and I could kind of help fix because we know how to kind of have those difficult discussions. You have to have those difficult discussions. You have to have those direct discussions about why are you, because there's avoidance too that happens in this structure quite a bit. Because sometimes folks will just ignore what's going on or what you're asking until you have a
Dismiss it.
one-on-one meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, or we could run the United Nations.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But the
But you
other
know what?
side, right? The matrix environment, it does build those influence skills because they expose
Yeah.
structural gaps, right? If the authority isn't clear, customs will get pulled into competing directions.
And isn't this interesting too, where we need a sponsor for sure,
Yes.
back to our previous episode? I
Yeah.
mean, we need to really work our sponsor relationships.
Right, right. So at a high level, guys, what helps the matrix work for customs, you put decision making authority in writing. You have to decide in policy who's doing what, or you will continue to swirl because no one will make the call, or someone that you don't want making the call will. I think the second thing is kind of align the funding and the priorities across stakeholder. When you're a leader in this type of organization, like Renee mentions, you have to have goals that I say something for everyone. You might need to have a goal for finance and a goal for supply chain, a goal for your business, right? But the idea is that that's how you're showing value to the stakeholders so that you stay um, engaged in that space. I think the third is holding the policy centrally to maintain consistency because that policy will kind of document those decision-making authorities in writing in the best way. So if you hold them centrally, it becomes a little easier to gain buy-in and get those decisions more transparent. And then the last thing I think is to maintain regular alignment with all reporting lines. You guys, do not discount that you have to have regular tag-ins with all of these reporting lines, because if you miss one or you don't have a relationship, I'm telling you that it's when you need it most, you're going to not have that relationship. And I also think too, sometimes the tides turn. Um, so he'd fall in favor and out of favor kind of on a weekly basis. And if you don't have those regular tag-ins, it causes trouble.
Yeah, the
Right.
worst case is when customs is forced to choose between 2 or 3 or
Right.
4 bosses informally, right?
Mm-hmm. And in matrix organization, executive sponsorship, like Renee mentioned, is very critical. It's not just the support, but it's the sponsorship that removes the barriers and makes change happen. So it's the sponsor that elbows in and says, I'm going to have the discussion with Bob, Sally, or Joe to kind of reduce this friction and see if they can't give us a head to support, I don't know, a new return material process or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, RMA. Oh my God, that's always good.
Yeah.
They're always fun, huh? In a matrix. But yeah, I've experienced the difference, in support and not support. But without a sponsor, you and to clear these obstacles, like we said in our episode previously, the escalation stalls and then risk keeps accumulating because you're not getting decisions made.
Right, right. And I think that if the paths aren't defined on who you escalate to and like whose role it is to kind of remove the roadblock, be it a sponsor or a direct function, then the customs team doing the work kind of absorbs that risk quietly, and then it's never really known until something very bad happens. Right.
Okay, our last one is hybrid.
Mhm.
Most mature organizations are hybrid. They're a
Mhm.
mix of centralized governance, decentralized execution,
Mhm.
and some matrix reporting. I love this.
Yeah, yeah.
This
And
is
if
my
you have a
favorite.
hybrid structure, customs is organized within a strong operational execution, but with limited strategic input. In our example, and Renee, maybe what's the key problem in this space?
Customs is seen as a cost center. My
Right.
worst. I always want to be a profit center, not a business partner.
Right. So the here are you want separate compliance governance from operations execution. So the oversight function needs to be a little separate than the operations function, and you'll see things kind of move forward in a quicker fashion. I will say too that it's separate, but they have to collaborate to come to the right answer, right? Because we found that no one is really right until you get into a meeting and kind of collaborate and come out with the aligned position. I think you want to pull customs upstream into sourcing, as we mentioned before, supplier selection, cost modeling, get it more elevated in upstream, because if you're on the catcher at the very tail end, it's very difficult to kind of resolve any compliance issues. Also consider the use of data, like we mentioned, for risk-based audits and savings discovery. I think aligning with legal, tax, and enterprise risk management, wherever they sit, however your matrix is going to be really important here. Mhm.
Yeah, and then this is where we become a value team versus a gatekeeper.
Yeah,
If we can get these things upstream, like Julie mentioned, those 4 points.
yeah, yeah. And kind of your must not is to be reactive. Mature organizations should not run customs like a fire department. You have to run it like it's a consistent function that requires people to listen. Right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
that's such good, Julie. That
Mhm.
is such a good piece of advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's close with the failure patterns that break customs programs, no matter what the
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah. So I think customs fails when the authority doesn't match the responsibility. I think that when decisions aren't documented or who's supposed to decide. I think the third is kind of where brokers are treated like compliance owners. That's a big no-no. And then I think the last is leadership only engages after the audit notice hits, after the bill gets paid, after, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So org structure doesn't fix everything, but the wrong structure, of course, can guarantee compliance problems and issues.
Right, right, right.
So let's what is our FIO, Jules,
Yeah.
for this episode?
So I think everyone listening should pick an organizational structure you might tweak. And I think we want to write it down in your annual goals. So it is goal season. Maybe it's a little late for goal season. We want to try to leverage that. So if we try to give you tips for every type of org structure, kind of think about what your problem is and what we said here could resonate with it, and see if you can't follow it through.
Awesome. Yeah. And maybe if you got to listen to our episodes a couple, 3 times, that's okay.
I know. Rewind.
All right. Thanks for. Right. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Go to our community Trade Geeks, and thanks for listening. Thanks, Jules.
Thanks, Renee.